So if you repay evil for evil, insult for insult, bad word for bad word, curse for curse, he says, knock yourself out, but you're not going to get the blessing of God. You're going to be poisoned by yourself, by your attitude, by your rebellion against what I'm asking you to do. Forgiveness, everyone, all the time, for everything. That's what Jesus says. No ifs, ands, or buts. No second-rate forgiveness. Perhaps if you bless them each time you think of them, Satan will give up reminding you of them and the offense. You know, I've told the story of Joseph before from this context of forgiveness. And I love it because Joseph was a young man. God gave to him a dream that God actually accomplished many, many years later. It was a dream that he would be over all of his older brothers, which, of course, in the Jewish home would be very offensive. And they were offended by it. And so they were jealous, and they planned and plotted to kill him. They grabbed him when he came near. They took his coat that his dad gave him, and they put it in blood. They had this conspiracy to convince his dad that the wild animals got him. And then they had the idea, we'll sell him instead. We'll sell him to this band that's going past on the way to Egypt. And we sold him into slavery, and he was 30 years in Egypt before he saw his brothers again. And he was in jail. He worked as a slave, and things went bad, sometimes bad to worse. He had every right to be bitter, to be angry. And yet, by a miracle of God, he was neither. When he met his brothers, he was drawn to them. He loved them, something God did in his heart. And when he got married and had his first son, he named his first son, get this, God has helped me forget. Manasseh. God has helped me forget. When his second son came along, he named him, God has made me fruitful. Ephraim. God has made me fruitful. Kind of cool, huh? My first son, God has helped me forget. And because I've forgotten, now I'm all about the fruit that God is blessing me with in my life. That's my second son. Do you notice the progression here? I forgive. God has helped me forget. And now he's blessing my life. Where's the blessing of God? How come I never see it? Maybe, perhaps, you've gotten stopped at this roadblock. Now making amends. I'm pretty good at forgiveness. Maybe it's because I haven't had the deep things happen to me that have happened to you. Maybe it's because I've pretty much taken a lifetime studying how God has forgiven me. Maybe it's because I understand my own sin nature and I know that I'm powerless over it myself and I'm only here by God's grace. And maybe it's because of that. I don't know. But I quickly forgive people. I've developed that habit in my life. But I'm not good at making amends. I'm not good at going back to people I have hurt and trying to repair and restore a relationship. I'm a typical American. We live in a throwaway society. If you hurt me, I hurt you. See you later. There's lots of fish in the sea. Don't need you anymore in my life. And God's not that way. If he was, we wouldn't be here, by the way. He would have checked us off a long time ago. God's not that way, and his followers, he always leads to repair and to restore most often. Now, this is the difficult part for me. As I mentioned, I'm not that good at it. The story I love is the one in the ministry of Jesus with Zacchaeus. Remember Zacchaeus in Sunday school? He's the tax collector, rich man, sinner, and he knows it. And he hears about Jesus coming to town, and something's starting to stir in his heart. And he says, I got to hear this guy. And he goes to hear Jesus, but he can't. He's so short, he can't see. And so he climbs up in a tree, sees Jesus, and Jesus sees him. And somehow knows that his heart is ready. And so he says, we're going to do lunch today, Zacchaeus. And so they go to Zacchaeus' house, and they have a meal together. And after the meal, Zacchaeus bursts out of his house, and he says, I'm giving half of what I own to the poor. And anybody I've hurt or wronged, I give them 4 times what I've taken from them. And I wish he'd have taken something from me. I mean, can you imagine 4 times restitution? And then Jesus says this, today salvation has come to this house. There was such a conversion in the heart of Zacchaeus that he says, I am going to make amends for any and all that I have wronged. It is a right thing. It is a good thing. It is a God thing to go back and say, listen, I was wrong. I am sorry. Will you forgive me? What can I do to make this right? Not that you've ever hurt anybody, but I know I have. In fact, I still have the sin nature, and so I'm still going to sin. And you still have the sin nature, and you're still going to sin. And so as we walk together, you know this from your own family, there are going to be things that rub you the wrong way. Even Jesus, who was perfect, you remember this? He was 12 years old. He stayed in the temple. Yeah, I have to be about my Father's business. And his mom came back and said, Jesus, why have you done this to us? She was disappointed with Jesus, though he had never done anything wrong. And the disciples woke up Jesus in the boat during the storm. He says, Jesus, don't you care about us, that we're going to die? They were disappointed, hurt that Jesus wasn't there. You remember Martha and Mary? And Martha is in there cooking dinner. Mary's sitting at the feet of Jesus, and they're visiting, and she comes bursting into the living room and saying to Jesus, don't you care that I'm out here doing all the work and Mary's here just listening to you talk? Now, Jesus never sinned. And even Jesus apparently caused hurt. Why? Because people are sinful. So it's going to happen. So we need to make amends. Here's why we should. God says, we've gone over that. Letter B, making amends breaks chains of negative relational cycles. Let me just propose this for a minute. That there's probably some things in your family, in you, in your brothers and sisters, in your parents, perhaps in your grandparents, that just sort of get passed down. Fits of temper run in my family. Or pride runs in my family. Or you name it. I mean, there's some traits that run in your family that you begin to see in yourself. How do you break that cycle? How can you break that for your kids so it doesn't just keep going? I believe it's found in step 6. To break the cycle begins with forgiving and confessing and asking forgiveness. And letter C, it expunges your record, allows God to move further into your life. I'll tell you a true story. This comes from a pastor I trust and one of the people that came to his church one day. True story. It says, a number of years ago at our church, there was a lady named Judy going through a messy, messy divorce. Her stress was high, and on top of the divorce, she began to go blind in one eye. Her eye began to deteriorate, so she went to the Scripps Institute in California to have it checked out. They said, sure enough, it's deteriorating, and we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do about it. Some kind of degeneration that was irreversible. One day she walked into our church and was sitting there in the service, and I was speaking on resentment. And I said this, for your own sake, you've got to let it go. For your own sake, you've got to release your offender, no matter what they've done to you. Don't allow other people in your past to continue to hurt you in the present through resentment. Let it go. This woman bowed her head and prayed. Said, God, I am hurt, but I release my offender. I let him go. She walked out of church and across the patio, and her eyesight came back. She went back to Scripps Institute. They said, we don't understand. There's no cure for this. There's no reversing this. This is a miracle. You were blind in this eye. When she let go of her resentment, God said, I want to do a miracle in your life. You have no idea of what can happen in your life, he says, when you let go of the people who have hurt you. It's true for forgiveness, and it's true for making amends. As I mentioned, there's no detour around step 6 in your life. You will bump into it. You will bump into it often. And I can tell you, I can promise you, I've seen this so many